Hey everybody, it's Amos, and this is the Hyper Luminal compressor pedal from Darkglass Electronics, and it's a big deal. This here is Darkglass's only standalone compressor pedal, and one of the many cool things that we're going to talk about is that it is a hybrid design. At the heart of this pedal is a VCA, or voltage controlled amplifier. That's the thing that does the actual compressing, and it is analog. But this VCA is controlled with a digital sidechain, and so that means that you can be extremely precise with the controls of the compressor without ever turning your signal into ones and zeros. Specifically, Darkglass have taken advantage of this slightly unholy fusion of analog and digital to model the Hyperluminal's three main settings on three distinct and useful compressors. Let's get up close and personal. So the layout of the Hyperluminal is fairly straightforward, but don't worry, I'm going to talk about it a lot. The compression knob here sets the threshold for the compressor, that is to say the point at which it becomes active. So the further clockwise you turn it, the more of your signal gets compressed. The blend knob lets you mix your uncompressed signal back into the output of the Hyperluminal, and I love this. So this lets you get all the squash and all the tone that you want from heavy compressor settings, but then you can dial in some of your dry signal to recover some of the dynamics or some of the life of the playing. The time knob over here controls the attack and release settings, and if you've used a compressor before, you're probably used to seeing these as two separate controls. But the Hyperluminal has an approach to this that I actually don't think that I've seen before. So when you turn the knob all the way counterclockwise, what you get is a fast attack and a slow release. All the way to the other side, you have a slow attack and a fast release. This kind of made my eyes cross for a second, but once I started using it, I realized you can kind of think about this as a punch knob. So all the way to the left, the compressor snaps on quickly once the signal crosses the threshold and then stays on for a long time. So this is better for sort of overall smoothing and leveling. The further clockwise you turn it, the more of the attacks of your notes get through, and the quicker the compressor turns off after the signal drops back below the threshold. So this is good for letting like the punchy front part of a note come through, controlling anything that's going to get too hot, and then releasing quickly. Output sets the final level. Under the knobs here we have a gain reduction meter, and I love these, and I think they should be compulsory on compression pedals. It helps you visualize exactly how the compressor is working, how much of your signal is crossing the threshold and getting compressed, how quickly the attack and release are working. Being able to listen with your eyes as well as your ears is a huge benefit in getting your compression just right. So this next part is a bit of a flex, but I am here for it. The parts of the pedal that control that digital sidechain we were talking about earlier are controlled with these little sci-fi touch pads, and you just tap them to cycle through the settings. I tried doing it with just my mind, but it only worked like half the time. Over here, you have the three modes that control how the VCA behaves. The bus mode is modeled after the SSL bus compressor, something that you've heard on just about every piece of popular music that's been made in the last couple of decades. It's surgical, it's discreet, it doesn't color your tone much, if at all. Sim is based on the Darkglass Supersymmetry, which was their first standalone compressor pedal and has since been discontinued. This has sort of a warmer, almost a vintage sound to it, with the highs being attenuated ever so slightly. Good for the overall smoothing thing. FET is based on the legendary 1176, another piece of gear that you've heard on just about every piece of music that you've ever listened to. This setting, in my opinion, has the most mojo, and of course even includes the famous all-in setting where you smash all of the ratio buttons at once, and it is wild. This here is another sci-fi touch orb that cycles through the available ratios, how hard your signal gets compressed once it crosses the threshold that you set with the compression knob. You'll notice that there are no printed labels on the pedal for the ratios, and that's because each mode has its own set of ratios. Selecting the bus mode means that your available ratios are 1.5, 2, 4, and 10 to 1. FET brings up the famous 4, 8, 12, 20, and all-in settings, and it's hard to tell what they are for the Supersymmetry settings because there's nothing listed in the manual for either this pedal or the original Supersymmetry, but it sounds like they're about the same as the bus settings. If you want to go nuts with the granular details of how all of these compressors work, you just connect to the Darkglass suite through this here USB port and have at it. You can set constant attack and release times for each mode. You can even reverse the polarity of the time knob. I don't know if that's what reverse the polarity actually means, but I've always wanted to say it. You can even set the active frequency range for the compressor, and in all the examples that we're about to hear on both the bus and FET settings, I bumped that up to about 110 Hertz so that the low end could stay uncompressed, because I was more interested in hearing how the compressor reacted to the highs, to things like distortion, pick attack, and slapping. I'm sure we can all agree that that's enough talking. Let's listen to it. All right, this time we're going to explore the bus setting based on the SSL compressor. Mix all the way up so you really hear what we're doing. What's in that level. So this one starts off at a fairly low ratio, so I'm going to bump that up again so we can really hear what it does. So you can hear that this shortens the attack and lengthens the release. It's a little punchier. All right, now let's explore the supersymmetry. This one does seem to have a bit of a tone thing going on, a really slight ducking of the highs, which is good. We want to do kind of a warm thing for this particular part. Press it a little bit harder, and let's slow these times down. This is definitely a subtle one, but as you can tell from the dots, it's working pretty well to smooth out the levels. All right, we're going to use this part to explore the FET setting on the Hyper Luminal, which of course is based on the famous 1176. Always keeping an eye on the output to make sure it's consistent. Getting pretty squashy as the ratio gets higher. All right, ready for this? Woo! Level jumps quite a bit, but that's the famous all-in setting. I like how that sounds, actually. Let's mess with the time here a little bit. Blend some of the original back in. Also drops the level. We ask a lot of our compressors. Shape my tone, but not too much. Make everything sound slightly better, but not too different. Control the peaks without rendering everything an expressionless rectangle in the DAW. The amount of control that Darkglass has managed to fit onto the face of this pedal is really impressive. I think the hybrid design is clever and useful, and the amount of fine-tuning you can do before you even crack open the Darkglass suite is really impressive for a pedal at this size and this price point. If you want surgical, barely there level smoothing, you've got it. You want smashed madness, you can have that too. I can say that in general, the range of tones here is really subtle. I didn't notice wild differences even when I was switching between modes. This is not necessarily like a stomp box, something that you kick on to really make everything sound different. Apart from the fireworks of the all-in setting under the FET mode, this is just a pedal that sets about doing something very specific very well with a lot of control. I do really recommend getting to know this pedal with a VU meter handy, something that can let you watch your levels very specifically. And the more I used it, the more I found myself making lots of small moves, just trying to get everything to sound slightly better one little step at a time. Moving just about any parameter on the face of the Hyper Luminal is going to change the level of your output, and it can be easy to get pulled into the idea that something is better when all it really is louder, because our ears usually tell us that something louder is better. Make a small move, check the level, change the output. The overall design is classy, elegant, and simple. The gain reduction is easy to read in a dark space, and using the psychic touch plates is a great way to remove some real estate around where your foot would go so you don't hit anything accidentally. Although once you get this pedal set like you like it, I doubt you'll be turning it on and off all that much. I tried to warn you about the amount of talking, but this pedal and I both have a lot to say. This has been the Hyper Luminal. I've been Amos. You have been amazing. I'll see you soon.